guys, welcome to Shawn Watson Davis TV. Today I have here with me Pilar Charles. Pilar is a recent graduate of Lansing Community College in the School of Nursing. And I know that nursing is a hot profession right now, so Pilar has agreed to sit with me to share with me and my viewers her takeaways from her experience as she prepared to become a nursing graduate. And dare I say, not only a graduate, but an honors graduate. She graduated magna cum laude, and she also was bestowed the Nightingale Award, the Florence Nightingale Award. And so I am so super proud of Pilar, and I am looking forward to hearing all that she has to share with us today. So welcome, Pilar.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today. So I'd like to just begin the interview by asking you to share what your nursing preparation has been, what has been your journey. Just generally, let's just start from the general awareness of the experience of becoming a nurse.
Okay, so I've always known that I wanted to go into the medical field. Literally, as a kid, it would be like, ooh, I want to watch like these stories on like people getting surgery and all that. For some reason, I just always had like a drawing to one, like the body, but also just like helping people, like any way that I could help someone. I just always wanted to be right there in front, caring for them. So I knew helping some people in some way, medical, something in that realm, but I didn't really know like where that was gonna take me. And then later on, I did actually end up experiencing my own health issues as a child, and that experience in itself made me realize, okay, like nursing is exactly what I want to do. I had some of the most amazing nurses that I've ever had that I still remember their names to this day, but I also had some nurses that had a really negative impact on me and made me realize the exact health professional that I didn't want to be. So in high school, I did, it's called Career Center for us, and it's where you go to a vocational school. They have a whole bunch of different programs that you can get involved in wherever your interest is at.
And name that school. Which school were you at?
So it's called the Wilson Talent Center, and it's in Mason, Michigan here.
Formerly known as the Capital Area
Career Center. Yes.
Okay.
Where Miss Betty was.
In Mason, Michigan.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I did that my junior and my senior year, and during that time I was able to get my patient care technician certification. So there is where we started doing our clinicals at our local hospitals here in McLaren and Sparrow. And so that just like helped me get a feel of what my nursing career was going to look like, what my responsibilities were going to be, how involved I would be with my patients. And originally that actually scared me, seeing the role as a patient care tech, because during that time, like, our patient care techs literally had whole floors to themselves, and not in the sense of feeling like I didn't want to be a nurse anymore, but I questioned whether or not I would be able to take care of my patients to the best of my ability, knowing how many patients that they had. Going into this field, I knew that because of my experience with my own health issues, that I never wanted any of the patients that I took care of to feel like they were a burden, like they weren't cared about, or that they were just another number. And I was just, okay, I can do what I can do and I'm gonna leave. I wanted to make sure that I gave them the utmost care. So that actually deterred me from nursing for a little bit. I got in my head, I was like, I don't know if you can do this, so let me just look at something else in healthcare. So then that's when I was like, okay, let's go the sonography route. And that is where if you're getting like a diagnostic test and they're trying to figure out something that's going on with you, those are the healthcare members that will like put the gel on you, and then they'll roll the little ball on you to get an image, and then once you're done with the image, you leave. So the prerequisites for sonography and nursing are pretty much similar. So it was actually the semester right before I was getting ready to apply to the sonography program, and I was like, you do not like this. Like, you're in these classrooms with these other students that are pursuing nursing, and obviously you're in the classroom, so they're like, what are you doing? I'm going for this. And people would ask me what I'm going for, and I was like, okay, yeah, sonography. But whenever nursing was talked about, I would get so ramped up as if that was like my own degree. And so I really had to like sit down with myself, and I'm like, what is holding you back from doing something that you genuinely love? So I really had to sit down and have that conversation with myself. It was like, you know what? This is something that you enjoy. This is something that you want to do. You cannot let your own fears hold you back from what it is that you want. So talk to my mom, talk to my support team that was around me, and they already knew. They was like, I was waiting for you to tell me when you're gonna switch your major, and knowing that you wanted to be so much more involved. So I did not apply to sonography school that semester. I took my remaining classes that I need for my nursing program, and I got accepted. So 3 years later, after finishing my prereqs, I finally got into my nursing program, and I finished 2 years later, and finished nursing school with honors. It was not easy, but we did it.
Absolutely. And did it strongly.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, indeed. Very much so confirmed.
Yes,
that
exactly.
You were in the right career path.
And once like I got into it and actually started like knowing that I was like doing all of this for nursing school, I feel like that ramped up an even more like excitement and a fire under me to be like, okay, you got these prerequisites, they're hard, but you can get it done. And then even getting into nursing school, that in itself was a very taxing experience, mentally, emotionally, physically. I feel like nursing school affects you in all of those ways, but your passion is always going to help drive those like really hard moments that are within whatever program that you did. And I feel like that was definitely one of the main pieces that really helped me get through those really, really hard times in nursing school.
Got it. So in terms of prerequisites, what did you have to do to qualify for to apply to the nursing school?
Okay, so every school is different, but there is specific classes that you have to take just to start building your knowledge for what it is that you're getting ready to get into. So there's a list. So once you go into the school that you're going to, they figure out the major that you're in, and there's a list of like, okay, this is your to-do list, these are the classes that you have to finish in order to get into the program. So some of those classes, at least for LCC, look like taking anatomy, physiology, medical terminology. You have to take some psych classes, because whether or not whatever patient you work with, they may not be deemed as a psych patient, but in some way you're going to be caring for your patients, and there's going to be some psych aspect to it, whether it's anxiety and depression. Being in a hospital in itself, you don't want to be there. That's scary. So there is some emotional aspect to that too. So they have you take psych classes so you can just get a basis of understanding like how the mental affects the physical, and how you can properly support your patient throughout that. We also had some communication classes. A big part of your job in nursing is going to be talking to your patients, explaining things to them in a way that they understand, emotionally supporting them in a way that makes them feel comforted and supported, therapeutically talking to them in a way that makes them feel completely heard and understood, and not saying something to them that's going to feel derogatory or feel as though you're not understanding them, or putting something extremely harsh, and now you just made that whole experience for them even more traumatic. So those are the basis of your prerequisites that you'll take for to get into the nursing program. There's a couple other classes that I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're science heavy, they're communication heavy, and they're psych heavy.
Gotcha. Very good. Very good. And do you have to have a certain GPA in order to qualify to apply to nursing school?
Thinking back, because they also changed the requirements for LCC's nursing program. Before it was, I'm pretty sure they wanted you to have at least a 2.5. I know in your science classes specifically, they wanted you to have a 2.5 in those, because nursing is like science heavy. So I believe overall it was like a 2.5 or a 3 point, and then there were specific classes where they required you to have a certain grade in that. and that was like your anatomy, your physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And then before, they used to have it where you could write like kind of like a letter of recommendation, but it was a letter of recommendation from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But they've taken that out now, so it's specifically just grade based. So obviously the higher your grade, the better. But honestly, if you're going into nursing school at this point, I feel like in a way you kind of have an advantage, because they need nurses so bad, so they're kind of overlooking those high expectations of grade point averages. Because when I was coming in, they were really pushing like you need to have a 4.0 over a 3.5 in order to get in. But I feel like from other people that I've talked to, they're kind of being more lenient with those grade point averages, just because they need nurses so badly.
Got it. And ultimately, before you can start the practice, you have to pass a certification exam, right? Or a licensing exam.
Oh, so after you graduate?
Right.
Yeah, so once you graduate nursing school, that just tells you like, okay, you've taken all of the requirements of the course.
Right.
So you finished your nursing school, but in order to become a registered nurse, in order to like actually start practicing as a nurse, that is when you take your board exam, which I'm sure you guys have heard it as the NCLEX, and you have to pass that, and that is when you actually become licensed and you can begin working as a registered nurse.
Got it. Very good.
So you're going to do all that schooling, and then you're going to have to take another big test that's going to stress you out and do that.
But that's also going to help keep the public safe.
Exactly.
Right?
We don't want just anybody out there taking care of our loved ones.
Exactly. Very good. So now you have met all of your prerequisites. You have applied to nursing school. And now you are in nursing school.
Yes.
And so...
Congratulations if you're there. You did it.
Exactly. So tell us about that journey. What's the curriculum entail?
Okay. So, again, it's kind of different between schools. My sister is also in nursing school right now, too. So her curriculum is a little bit more different than what my experience was. But as far as LCC specifically... you have they call it 4 levels, which is your two years. So for your first level, it's going to be an introduction to like nursing. So you're kind of just going to get a basis of like what you're getting involved in. So this is when you're going to start learning like basic skills. So how to take vitals, which includes blood pressure, temperature, getting your patient's name and date of birth, which are your identifiers that you're always going to use before you do something on your patient. You're also going to learn how to transfer your patient to a bedside commode, or just transferring them in general. We want to learn safe body mechanics so we're not hurting ourselves. So your first level is going to be very heavily based, just providing you the tools to keep your patient safe as well as you. And then you're also going to get pharmacology that semester, that first level also. So you can start learning some of those medications and medical terms. And then second level will be your first med surge. So this is where you start getting a little bit more deeper into those diagnoses that are pretty common for patients. So this is when you kind of start learning about heart disease or asthma, diabetes, because those are big things that we're seeing within our community. So you kind of start learning. They're slowly building you up. So this is where you kind of just learn about the diseases and very, very like a dash of like how it affects the body. And then this is when you also start getting into your specialties. So second level, you are also being taught about OB, which is obstetrics or women's health. And then third level is Med-Surg 2. So now you're continuingly to dive more into, wait, did I say third level or?
Third level.
Third level?
Med-Surg 2.
I think I messed up.
Okay. Go ahead and correct.
No, third level is Med-Surg 2. Yes, third level is Med-Surg 2. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So yes, third level is Med-Surg 2. So now you're diving even more deeper into, okay, you've learned the diagnosis and a little tiny bit of how it affects the body, but now you're learning like even more of like, okay, your patient is presenting this way, this is what happened, this is how the disease coincides with other things that happen within the body too. And then you also are now being introduced to pediatrics, which is your second specialty. And then fourth level, which for us, they told us third level was going to be the hardest, but from my experience, I feel like our fourth level was the hardest. And this is where you have Med Surg 3, which here they're expecting you to think like a nurse. They want you to know what the diagnosis is, and then from there, they want you to know how that avalanche effect can happen if you're not noticing things within your patient and how quickly things can change for them. So at this point, despite having no experience working as a real nurse yet, they're expecting to see that critical thinking that they've been having you build up since that first level. And then so here, this is where like a lot of your tests are going to be application based. So again, they're going to give you a situation and they want to see how you are figuring out and understanding how that situation can change within an instance, or how it can affect your patient. So that's Med Surg 3, which I'm sure we'll go into deeper with that, because that class was a whirlwind for all of my classmates. And then you have professional professional practice nursing. So this is our class where they're preparing you to go into the work field. You've reached it to fourth level, so now we're like, we got to get you guys prepared in order to be out here working. So this was honestly my most chill class. In here, you're working on your resumes, your cover letters, you're working on building a portfolio in order to present to your interviewer. And this is where like your certifications can be, so like your basic life training, if you've gotten specialized in something else, if you've gotten any certificates, like if you've had honors, if you've gotten scholarships, you can put that in there. So you pretty much build upon that your entire semester. And then they also teach you about like nursing law, so ways in which to make sure you're looking out to know what things are there placed for you in order to keep you safe as well as your patient. So a lot of it is kind of like the back end, what people don't really like to talk about, but it is important for us to know, because outside of keeping our patients safe, we want to make sure that where we're working are also putting things in place in order to keep us safe, whether that's safe patient ratios, what type of insurance policies we can get involved in, who to communicate to if we notice something that's wrong. So that's what professional practice is. It prepares you for all of those more like legal things that you can come into contact with as you're in your profession as a nurse.
Beautiful.
And that is all 4 levels, really condensed down.
Beautiful. Tell me about the next phase, which is the interviewing stage. What was that all about?
Interviewing. So from my experience with my school, we did not have any mock interviews. It was kind of like, okay, we have our professional practice class that's like helping you get a portfolio together, but we didn't have a class where we practiced interview skills or anything like that. That was all, that's on you to figure out, that's on you to look up and research. So from my experience, when I did the Career Center, we did have mock interviews there. So I was able to have that past experience, which taught me a little bit about how to present myself in an interview, what kinds of things to wear to interview, what kinds of questions to ask to make sure that you have questions prepared. So I did luckily have that past knowledge of preparing me a little bit for interviews, but also I was just so nervous. I'm like, this is my first like grown woman job. I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm presenting myself in a way that is appropriate to my interviewer. I want to make sure that, of course, I don't know everything, but I want them to know that this is something that's important to me and that like I'm invested in this hospital in which I'm at. So some things that I did that prepared me for my interview is that I went on YouTube and I looked up like common nursing interview questions so that I could get an idea of what kind of questions were going to be asked to me, and then I could prepare myself. Because a lot of times in your nursing interviews, they like to ask about previous experience and how that experience that you had, how you applied it, and how you worked through it. So I wanted to prepare past clinical experience that I had and apply it to those questions. So a lot of times they ask about like a difficult patient that you had or something that you saw wrong in the clinical setting and what you did from there. Like how did you handle that. They want to know if you see something wrong, are you going to report it? Or if you have a difficult patient, which you will, not every patient will be easy, how did you handle that? How did you go about that? How did you keep your composure and stay calm? So I wanted to make sure that I remembered my past clinical experience so I could apply it to that. And then also, wherever hospital I was looking at, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. So when I got my list together, the hospitals that I wanted to interview at, I made sure that I researched those hospitals. What was their mission? What were their values? What were their ratings? What was important to them? If I was able to see, do they have a nurse residency program for their new grads, which is kind of like another support system for nursing, new grad nursing graduates. It kind of is like a mentorship, like it's kind of like a separate class outside of your job where it's all new grad nurses, and then you have a mentor there that goes over things with you. So if you're struggling in one area at work, you guys come together as a team and work on those things. So it's an extra support for you. And studies have shown like hospitals that offer the new grad residency, they produce safer, more competent nurses. So I knew wherever hospital I worked at, I wanted to have that also. So that was pretty much the basis of the research that I did. And then I ran mock interviews at home. So I had either my mom interview me or my sister interview me, so I could also have that experience of what it felt like to have somebody else ask me those questions rather than just talking to myself, because I feel like when someone else asks you a question, it's a whole different experience. So that was pretty much like my basis of how I researched and then prepared for my interviews.
Excellent. And were you applying to jobs at the same time that you were preparing to take your licensing test?
So no, I actually started preparing for jobs while I was still in nursing school. Okay. So once it hit about April, I was researching and preparing for positions. I knew that when I took my NCLEX, I wanted to focus on just that, and that's it. And I felt like around April, just where we were at with school, I had established a routine myself that I could time manage, so I didn't feel so overwhelmed with studying for exams and then also like doing school and all of that. So it was actually after our spring break is when I really started to like, okay, let's start doing some interviewing, let's start preparing for it. So I secured my job in March and I graduated in May.
Okay. And you took the exam
in June.
In June.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And tell us what you did to prepare to take the exam, because you actually passed the exam after first sitting.
Yes.
And so clearly your recipe for preparation for that exam is worthy of understanding.
Yes. So I graduated May 11th. So I gave myself time to enjoy graduating. You just finished nursing school. That's a huge deal. Please give yourself the time to enjoy that. Spend time with family, spend time with friends. Just give yourself that time to like debrief for a second, because that was a lot to go through. You deserve to take a second to breathe and to enjoy and to have fun and go out, do all of that. Pour into yourself in that way. So I gave myself until, I think that whole week I didn't do a thing. And then my school actually offered like an NCLEX prep. So I did go to that. I went to all of the days. That was like a full week, I believe. Looking back, I feel like it didn't really offer me too much guidance. Like I feel like I didn't learn a lot from it, but I'm so glad that I went, because I would have never known that it didn't work for me if I didn't go. And it was part of our tuition, so you already paid for it. So if they offer that, just try it and see. You literally already spent money on it. So I did that. Didn't really feel like it worked for me though. So looking at research, I saw most commonly that people said Archer was most similar to the NCLEX. So I ended up going with that. And Archer it kind of mimics the NCLEX. Like there's a bunch of different ones. There's Archer, there's UWorld, there's Kaplan. They're all used in order to help mimic the NCLEX in order to help you prepare for it.
Okay.
So with Archer, I utilized their
and Archer is an acronym.
No, Archer is like a name.
Okay.
It's called Archer Review. It's an app.
And how do you spell Archer?
Archer.
Okay.
So on Archer, they have videos that you can use, and then they also have like the practice quizzes. And I started off trying to watch the videos, but they were like an hour long, and that just didn't work for me. I learned in nursing school that long videos, I just start going off. I start thinking about other things. I get on my phone, I get distracted. So like 30 minutes is like my max for me to like hone in and pay attention to whatever is being taught to me. So I didn't use the videos anymore. For Archer, I specifically used their readiness assessments and then their CAP exams. So the readiness assessments are going to be, they're going to be practice NCLEX exams. They go up to 85 questions, and they basically tell you how ready you are in order to take your exam. And based on their statistics, if you get 4 high or very high scores consecutively, then you have a 99% chance of passing your NCLEX. So I did more than 4. I did about 20, I believe, and all of my results were very high or high. You can make your own test, but I just felt like I'm doing these in order to know how ready I am to take it. So I just thought it was most beneficial to, one, get the practice of taking the questions, but also know like, okay, are you consecutively getting these very highs or highs? So I did those, and then every 4 days I did a CAP exam. So a CAP exam is like, it'll literally face you as if you're taking the NCLEX. So it won't tell you if you got the question right. It won't give you feedback. It'll literally just have the time, and it'll show you how many questions you answered. And I think that was really beneficial just to get the feeling of what it will be like when you're taking the NCLEX, because I feel like that's also like a nerve-wracking factor too, is just to know like how it's gonna feel when you take it. So making your mind get used to, okay, this is how my setting is gonna look. This is how long it's gonna take me to get through these questions. This is how it's gonna feel while I'm taking these questions. All those things help prepare you in order to take it, so you're not so anxious, like as if it was your first time seeing it. You've done it already. You've seen it. You're doing another. To me, when I went into my NCLEX, I'm like, you're taking another CAP exam. Like, you're fine. You got this. So I think preparing myself and giving myself that exposure of what it'll feel like and look like to take that exam helped a lot. And then speaking to previously, I stopped using Archer's videos. I supplement it with YouTube instead. So I use NCLEX High Yield. I listened to his podcast, and then I attended his free lectures every Wednesday. And then I also use Nursera. I used Simple Nursing, and then 2 days before I took my exam, I listened to Mark Klimick's prioritization and maternity videos, because I felt like my prioritization and then my maternity were the ones that I felt the most weakest at. And his videos are a little bit longer. I think they're like 2 hours, but I just like chopped them up into 30-minute sections so I could fully like receive the information in which he was giving me. And that is what I did to prepare for my NCLEX.
Beautiful. So
also on like diseases or medications or topics that I felt like I needed a little bit refreshing on, I made flashcards for those. And this was actually one of my study habits for nursing school, is that I would sit in front of a mirror and I would talk to the mirror as if I was teaching somebody else, and I felt like that helped me retain the information. So like one of the diseases that I kept getting on my Archer readiness assessments was hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. I kept getting them confused. I could not for the life of me like differentiate between the two. So I'm like, okay, you need to write this down. And then doing that and like writing them down and then talking to myself in the mirror as if I was teaching somebody else helped me actually retain the information. So for those medications or diseases that you feel like you just cannot retain or like understand, that is like one of my biggest tips that I have for nursing school as well as studying for your NCLEX.
Excellent. And next, if you would, please share your nursing journey in terms of the focus. So in other words,
Like my specialty.
You mentioned that you started off thinking stenography,
Mm-hmm.
then transitioned to nursing,
Mm-hmm.
and then as you thought about nursing, you were originally thinking about obstetrics
Yes.
or delivery of babies,
Mm-hmm.
and now you've landed in peds, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about that, because I think that it's important for people to recognize that you're always becoming.
Mm-hmm.
You're always evolving, and
Mm-hmm.
what helps you to become and to evolve is being exposed to different things.
Definitely.
So talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Okay. So yes, I realized that sonography was not where I needed to be. It was way too hands off for me, and I knew that I needed to be more involved with my patients in order to give them the best outcome and really be involved with getting them to their health. Because with sonography, you take the images, you wipe your patient off, then they're gone. You don't hear anything else about them anymore. Where in nursing, we are literally the backbone of the healthcare. You're right in the middle with the patient. You're working with their respiratory therapist. You're working with their physical therapist. You're working with their doctor. You're working with their families. You're working with nutritionalists. You're pretty much the center of that patient, and everyone else around is coming together in order to help them. But you're literally hand in hand with them with that patient, and that's what I wanted. So finally, after I got in my head thinking that I couldn't handle it, I knew that nursing was exactly what I needed to do. And after just kind of being exposed to my patients while I did home care, because I did home care for 3.5, 4 years, I was more so on the receiving end of working with geriatrics, which is our elders. And though I absolutely loved it, I adore my little elders, and I learned so much from doing it. And the information that I've learned from them, I continue to take with me to this day. But I realized that I wanted to be more on the receiving end of helping our kids to grow up, helping our kids to develop, and being on the end of, like Shawn was saying, them becoming, rather than being with them towards the end of their life. So that's when I started exploring the idea of either labor and delivery or pediatrics. With labor and delivery, it also touches on the fact of women's health. And another issue that's really important to me is that our Black and brown women are exponentially being killed during deliveries. So that was another driving force for me to go into that field. But I also knew that I really wanted to be on the growth and development of children and pouring into them in that way, also because when I experienced my health issues, I was also a pediatric patient. So that experience in itself also really holds near and dear to me, to give back to those kiddos, to make them feel that they are heard, they're safe, and they're okay. So with that, clinical is going to be literally your best friend when it comes to deciding where you want to go in nursing school. Take advantage of that time. Really, if a nurse is taking you underneath their wing and wanting to show you stuff, take it. Yes, it's scary. Yes, you don't want to feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're there to learn. You're literally paying them for you to learn. So take all of those opportunities that you can, because there's literally no better time to really get a full fledge of things until you're right there. You can read about things, you're gonna learn about things in lecture, but I'm like, clinical is that time to really see it in full action. So during my clinicals, my labor and delivery rotation actually was not the best experience for me. Unfortunately, the nurses that we had really made us feel as though like we weren't wanted there. So there was a lot of opportunity of learning that we missed out on.
Now when you say we, you're talking about
my classmates, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. There was a lot of opportunity of education that we missed out on, and just understanding what the world of labor and delivery nursing looks like. I fortunately had the opportunity to shadow on a labor and delivery unit when I did my career center, because I knew then that either women's health or pediatrics was the route that I wanted to go. So I did have that exposure then. But my clinical, really, I felt sad for my classmates because they weren't able to get the full experience of like what labor and delivery nurses do. Labor and delivery is not easy. It's not the same for every single patient. It's not a straight and narrow for every single patient. And there's so many stages that you as a nurse are supporting your patient and empowering them. And that's another aspect of labor and delivery that I liked. It's that in a way, it's not really your patient coming to you sick. It's an opportunity to empower them, uplift them, and support them. And honestly, a really beautiful experience. But it also can go very left if it's a difficult delivery, and having that knowledge and how to navigate and support your patient during that time, because it's quick. Hemorrhages are quick. Complications with the baby are quick. So that critical aspect also intrigued me to look in that aspect of being there to make sure not only am I keeping mom safe, but I'm keeping baby safe too. So I feel like with our clinical, there was a lot of that we missed, and we weren't able to really understand that till its full entirety. So yeah,
that's interesting that that's an area where Black and brown women and babies are having negative outcomes. And then you all as students in that environment had negative experiences. Yes.
Yeah,
that's interesting, really.
And another thing that's like really unfortunate is like when I've talked to nurses, like that's a big stigma when it comes to labor and delivery, is they're very cliquey, they're very mean, and I don't understand why it's that way.
Right.
But when I was thinking labor and delivery, that a lot of the response that I got was like, ooh, like be careful where you go, because they're not as welcoming. So I'm not sure why that is the experience that people have been receiving as they've gotten into that career. But yeah, when I was on the labor and delivery route, that was a lot of the feedback that I got from nurses when I was telling them what I wanted to do.
So there's an awareness that that culture doesn't have a sweet fragrance.
Yeah. Which is, again, it's frustrating, but it's also, there's some connections to it, because these Black and brown women are not being heard, like when they're saying something that is wrong, and not blaming it on the whole like labor and delivery unit, but just understanding my experience and like getting that very cold shoulder. I'm just like making some connections to like what patients have expressed, like what was their experience when they came in for like their deliveries. So
yeah,
I definitely think it's something that needs to be talked about more often, and something that needs to, take action to, because when patients are coming to us, they're coming to us and expecting them to feel safe within our care. You're the most vulnerable when you're in a hospital, and you're hoping that your nurse, your doctor, whoever is part of your team is going to come right hand in hand with you and make sure that they're taking care of you to the best of their ability.
Interesting. An interesting parallel. Had you ever thought about it that way?
No, actually not until we started talking. So yeah, definitely talking helped me like coincide those, as far as like my experience as a nurse, and just receiving information from patients, and then just also like having those conversations with other nurses about L&D.
Right, that's kind of a three-pronged experience there.
Yeah.
You've got the nurses who are training you all, who are saying, there's kind
are
of
you sure you want to do that?
Culture, right?
Yeah.
And then you go in there and you have the experience, and then ultimately, statistically speaking, the outcomes for Black and brown women and babies is tragic.
Yeah.
So
Again, it's definitely something that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because it's not okay.
Yeah, that needs to be investigated.
Yeah.
For sure, because there's a cultural
Mm-hmm.
problem there, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems almost like a cultural protection there.
Yeah.
Because if you're not welcoming to new
grads,
people coming in, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So, what about your work experience, Pilar? We've talked about your experience at Wilson's Talent Center.
Yes.
And we basically talked about all of the academic journey.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your work experience within the realm of finding yourself and becoming Pilar.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, after I finished Career Center and obtained my patient care tech license, I was like, all right, immediately it's time to get into the health field. This is what I want to do. At that time, I was working at a restaurant. I'm like, this is not what I want to be doing at all. So,
was the restaurant job your first job ever?
Yes.
Okay.
First, legal job, and I did babysitting and stuff, but that was my first you received a W-2 from it, taxes was withheld. Yeah. So I finally got my patient care tech certification. I was super excited. I'm like, oh my god, here's to the start of my healthcare journey. So like I said before, doing clinicals really deterred me from the hospital for a while. So I was like, I want to do something a little bit more intimate, a little bit more slower pace, something where I know that the patient that I'm caring for, I can give them the time that they deserve. So I was like, home care. So let me look into the aspect of home care. So it actually took me a while to find a position. So there's a difference. Patient care techs, you typically see them in the hospital because we get trained on EKG, and that's typically where you see patients getting that assessment at. And then you have your CNAs, which are your certified nursing assistants, and that's where you typically see those in your nursing homes and home care settings. So when I'm doing my research, I'm putting in patient care techs. That's the certification that I've gotten. But as far as other than just the training of the EKG, PCTs and CNAs are literally the complete same thing. You do the same thing. So looking back, I think I should have just put in CNA because I think that would have helped my search. But in a way, I'm also glad that I didn't, because my first position that I got as a PCT is what led me to coming into Shawn's life. So yes, so I ended up finding a posting on our neighborhood posting, because Shawn and I, unbeknownst to us, we literally live up the street and around the corner from each other. So Miss Betty and Shawn were my first family that I got to do home care for, and still in my life today, but I literally got the opportunity to be with Betty until the very end. And
Betty is who?
Betty is Shawn's mom. So still to this day, I feel like this was where I needed to be at first. There was so much as far as patients, my own patients, education with the medical field, as well as holistically in the way that you can care for your patients, and just the experience of with the home care setting, you not only get to care for your patient, but you also get to have that aspect of caring for the family also. And that's a big part of nursing. Your patient is not just your only patient. It's the mom, it's the dad, it's the brother, it's the sister. They are a unit, and you are taking care of everyone. So because it was in home, I was able to get that exposure to, yes, taking care of Betty, but I also got the experience of working with and taking care of Shawn too. We were a unit, we were a trio, we all did it together. So yes, that was my first position. Shawn is family. I still come over, we spend time together, and I feel like that's the beauty of going the home care route too, is that it gave me the experience of getting my feet wet into the healthcare, but it also allowed me the experience of building those relationships with the family and how important that is. Because the patient's family is going through it at the same time. You'll always hear people say, don't get too involved, don't let your feelings get too involved with it. But the reality is, like, there's some involvement that you have to do. And I feel like when you allow that space to really look at your patients as people and not their diagnosis, that's when you can actually help them the most, because you are treating them as a whole and not just what they're there for. And I feel like that, knowing that and experiencing that with Shawn and Betty, has allowed me to let patients feel comfortable to open up to me about things, and that actually ended up helping them with their care. So that's just advice to you also. Like, remember that your patient is not their diagnosis, they're a person in a whole, and you really need to take that time to genuinely get to know them so that you're holistically taking care of them and not just what they're there for. So, but after unfortunately Miss Betty passed away, I ended up going into it was more of what's the word for it, like it was like a business, and they also did home care, but it was more like Shawn was private care, whereas this new home care business that I went to, they're more of like corporate in a sense that you could say. So I worked with them for about 9 months, and then COVID ended up happening, and there was just some things that I wasn't liking with the way that they were taking care of their employees. So I stepped back from doing home care with them. And then I again, during this whole entire journey, I knew that when it came to nursing that I wanted to specialize with either women's health or children. So I was like, maybe this is the opportunity for me to explore and get experience in working with children. Like, I have babysat before, but I've never had the experience of like working with children in more of like that healthcare setting. Mm-hmm. So that's what led me to doing ABA therapy for a year. And
ABA stands for?
ABA therapy is behavioral therapy that we do for children that have autism.
Okay.
So yes, I got to work with the little kiddo for a year and a half with him. And not only did that like confirm me wanting to go into pediatrics, like that was definitely a top specialty for me, but also it exposed me to a knowledge that I didn't have before. I know there's a lot of questions or like hesitancy with ABA because there's some horror stories about it, about like ABA therapists being mean to kiddos that have autism, or you're trying to change them, and why would you ever want to do that? Like, kids are perfect the way that they are, which is true. But with anything, whether it's getting a tutor if you're having a little bit of a hard time in school, that is what ABA therapy is. We are providing these kids with resources to help with the overstimulation that they get when you have autism, but also teaching them safety. So a lot of my role as my kiddo's ABA therapist was to be a teacher for him. We went over home safety, we went over outside safety, we learned about going grocery shopping, we learned about learning mom's phone number and their address. We learned about playing with other kids outside, because a lot of times kids that have autism, they're not they have struggles with like socialness. So we work on building those tools for confidence and social skills, so that when they are at the age of going to school, or they are in school, they are given those tools to know how to do those things. So yeah, ABA therapy is a lot of building confidence and then giving them those skills so that they can be successful in society. And it's not just for kids with autism. I've actually learned like the skills that I've learned for like de-escalating and building confidence, I've used those with my adult patients in clinical setting. So that was also really really a rewarding opportunity to have, because not only did I learn more about autism, but I also was able to gain and learn skills that not only help my kiddo that had autism, but also use that with a wide range of people that I was introduced to in my clinical setting. And that was my work experience before nursing school and then while in nursing school.
Excellent. And so, just to assist people in terms of ideas for job searching, how did you find each of those jobs?
So yes, with Shawn, I found it on a posting on our neighborhood, like our neighborhood community, and then
and that site was called Nextdoor.
Yes, Nextdoor. And then for my other opportunity that I had doing home care, that was more of like the corporate business. I found, well, actually had a friend that worked there, so I found it out through her, but they also had postings on Indeed, and that's where I applied to. And then for the ABA, I also had a friend that worked in there, so I was able to, she sent me the resume, sent me the job request, and then I got in through a friend with that.
Okay.
But they also do postings on Indeed.
Very good. Excellent. So, before we wrap up, I'd like to have you explain what nurses are not taught.
Okay.
And I think it's important because I've heard so many people say, well, she's a nurse, and thereby
she should know it all.
Right,
exactly, she should know it all.
Exactly. Nurses and doctors, they know everything.
Yes.
And the reality is that we know what we've been trained on universally. Now, after your universal education in school, then you continue to add on to yourselves based on your own interest in terms of continuing education. That their self-study,
which is also a requirement for nurses. We have to do continuing education.
Okay, you have to do
that is how you keep, like, because my license expires in 2 years, and in order to renew it, I have to do that continuing education. That's how it's renewed.
Okay, gotcha. And so, how many credit hours are you required to get?
It's based on the unit that you're on.
Okay, okay, got it.
So, yep, that's unit specific.
Okay, got it.
As far as I know. That's what I know.
Okay, sure, that's fair. So yeah, speak to that. What are you not trained on in nursing school? Okay. That you think a lot of people think
that we're trained on.
Right, exactly.
So, the biggest thing that I was told in nursing school is for you to pass your NCLEX, and then your nursing job is where you learn your actual experience. And
NCLEX, would you
Yes.
Tell us what that acronym stands for.
NCLEX is your National Council Licensure Examination. So that is your exam that you take in order to become a registered nurse.
And NCLEX is NCLEX.
Yes.
Correct?
Okay. So, and based on my experience in clinical and even actually having like a real life experience, like, is anybody a nurse? Yeah, nursing school is definitely for like, it teaches you your basics, but also your tests are pretty much broad and like for like just universal, where in reality your patients, yes, they may have the same diagnosis, but every individual is completely different. Bodies react to different medications. Bodies react to different diseases. Bodies react and experience things based on the environment that they're in. And that's why it's so important to holistically treat your patient rather than like, well, they have this, so this is exactly how it's gonna look. It's not like that. So when it comes to the things that I feel like nursing school teaches you is I feel like they teach you the basics, so you have like a genuine knowledge of like cardiac disease, diabetes, how different diseases look in pediatric patients, what specific diseases are to pediatric patients. But when it comes to actually applying that information, I feel like that's when your real world experience will like help mold that general knowledge in what you got. So in talking with Shawn, one of the biggest things is that nurses are not trained to be nutritionalists. We get a general idea of what patients who have heart disease should be eating. We get a general idea of what diabetic patients should be eating. we get a general idea of what patients who have high blood pressure should be eating, but to really like buckle down and like figure out those meal plans, that's what a nutritionalist will do. I also feel like as far as running codes for patients, like if your patient loses their pulse and you'll hear like code blue, we got something called a simulation in nursing school, which it's what it sounds like. It simulates you being a nurse. And so we got to experience running a code for a patient, but I feel like even that in itself still is really hard to like genuinely feel like, okay, like I'm doing the right thing as a nurse, because in those codes it was just us. But in reality, when a code, you have a whole team that comes. You have doctors, you have respiratory, you have a scriber, so they're writing down every single little thing that's going on. You have nurses, you have your patient care techs, you have your CNAs. So actually experiencing that, I feel like that's something that nursing school cannot do, because when it comes to that, you have to learn what your role is when that's involved, and that's something that your actual nursing job will teach you. They'll tell you who's doing what you're responsible for, and then that's when you actually like know how to handle that. So that's like a big thing for codes that I feel like nursing school doesn't teach you. I also feel like they give you the resources to kind of aid you to do therapeutic communication, but I feel like that's honestly something that has to be practiced. When you're talking to someone, it's not a script. I mean, obviously they teach you the, like, make sure you're not closing off your body, make sure, depending upon what the cultural background is, you're not staring in their eyes too much, or you're not looking away, because depending upon what culture that is, it can be either seen as respectful or disrespectful. But I feel like just with experience and getting into a routine of being exposed to different things, that's when you'll actually learn how to therapeutically talk to your patients. That's not something that can be taught. You have to do it, and you have to learn how to do it. Again, there's certain tools that can be given to you, but from there, like, you really have to talk to yourself and remind yourself, like, I need to listen to my patient. I need to not cut them off. Even if you feel like you're so busy and like you can't sit there for a couple seconds, literally those couple seconds can tell you something about your patient that you wouldn't have gotten if you ran out the door. So I feel like that's another thing that you learn more once you're actually a nurse. And then I feel like that was like one more thing, but I can't remember. I can't remember.
That's okay.
I feel like those are like my big things right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing to remember is that, like I said, nursing school, you're just learning. You're learning the basics. You're learning how to prepare to pass an NCLEX, but always remember that you're going to be continuously learning. So once you pass nursing school, because you're going to pass nursing school, once you pass your licensure, because you're going to pass your licensure, always remember to be open and receptive to continuing to learning, because that never stops. And like, be open to those, be open to that constructive criticism, because again, like, as nursing students, there's only so much that we're allowed to do, and it's pretty minuscule to what nurses are responsible for doing. So take that time. If you're nursing, like, if you're the nurse that you're working with in clinical is really open to taking you anywhere and everywhere, because I feel like that's just going to help with your experience. But there's a lot in nursing school that you learn that's the proper way to do it, but when you're actually like in your job, like, that's not how that's gonna look, so to say.
Okay.
So I feel like nursing school is like perfect world book specific, where when you actually get into the practice, that's not how those things look. Like some of the basics, like obviously how you do your vitals, what those norms are going to be the same, but when it comes to like actually talking to patients, working with patients, that's when it's going to differ, because patients aren't book perfect. They're people, and they have different socioeconomic status, they are different genders, they have different precipitating factors that aid to their health and how their body reacts. There's different things that affect patients one way that they'll affect the other. So when you get into your field, you cannot treat your patient as that picture perfect book world. You have to treat them as a person and look at them holistically and how they're presenting to you.
Was there anything about nursing school that you didn't get that you wished you had gotten more of?
I think that one of the biggest things that I wish that I would have gotten from nursing school was I think it was like more in like the clinical setting of, I wish, so when in your clinicals, at least from my experience, you pretty much are kind of like acting as a nurse within limits though, because you're not allowed to pass meds by yourself. You're not allowed to, you know, make decisions for your patients. You're not allowed to call doctors or anything like that. So a big thing that I wish that nursing school would do is that in your first level, that's, you know, when you're learning on the basics and everything, I wish that they would give us the opportunity to shadow like our patient care techs, so that we can like actually do what the patient care techs are doing, which is like transferring patients, doing bed baths, changing their linen, with either with a patient in the bed or without, just to get those basic knowledge of everything that a patient care tech has to do, so that we can understand those things. Even feeding a patient, like, even you would think that wouldn't be hard, but like it is actually difficult to like feed somebody else. So I wish they would give us a time to shadow with the patient care tech and solely focus on those body mechanics of the things that we should be doing with our patients. And then I wish we had the time to shadow the nurse, so that we can see how she's delegating throughout her day. And when I say delegating, I mean how she's working with her patient care techs in order to work as a team to care for her patients that she has, but also how she assesses, how she implements with her patient, how she navigates things that are happening, and how she talks to her doctors when things are going wrong or they're not seeing the results that they want with their patient, just to get more of like understanding like what that role looks like as a nurse. Because I feel like as a nursing student, I feel like we're more so taking on the role of what a patient care tech does, and then just like having an assessment in there here and there, but there's no like, as a nurse you do those assessments and then there's the next step of like implementing those, and I feel like we never had the opportunity to really take it to that next level. So I feel like a lot of our understanding was still at the understanding of a patient care tech. So now that when you come into your position, it's kind of like, okay, well, what do I do next? So I wish we would have had that like experience of like actually calling the doctors, transferring patients, reading labs of like what our patient had done. Like you can do that as a nursing student, but it's different than like, okay, well, this is happening, so now we need to implement this, which is what you would do as a nurse. So I feel like I wish and hope that as nurses continue to come in, that they give us more of that experience of, okay, this is what your role is as a nurse and what you need to, if you start from A, then you go to B, then this is what you need to do at C. Just to help us when we go into the actual work field, have more of an understanding of like, okay, this is what my role is and this is how it looks.
Gotcha. Beautiful. All right. Well, I think that we've covered A to Z, unless, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is important for people, prospective nursing students, to understand?
I think the last thing that I would say is that nursing school is hard. It'll probably be one of the hardest things that you feel like that you've ever did. And I think the biggest thing is to remember, if this is something that you're passionate about, stick with it, continue with it. You know, lean on the people that you have that are there with you. And obviously make sure you're putting the time into your studies that you need to do, but also make sure you're taking the time to like pour into yourself too. You cannot pour into an empty cup. Like I said, nursing school takes a tax on you mentally, emotionally, and physically. So if you are only focusing on that and you're not doing anything for yourself, you're gonna burn out. It may not be right away, but it eventually will happen. So just make sure you're doing things to pour into yourself, whether that be going for a walk, working out, eating what you need to eat throughout the day to properly energize your body, doing yourself like skincare, hanging out with friends for a little bit, talking with your friends on the phone. Just do something that pours back into you so that when it comes to caring for those patients, when it comes to studying, when it comes to spending all those hours studying that you're going to be studying, because you will, I promise you will, it's going to feel like you literally just took a break and now it's back studying again. Make sure you're doing things to pour back into you, because you're not going to sustain. You're going to burn out before you even get to the finish line of finally saying that you finished nursing school. So that is my last bit. Just know that you got this. You got into nursing school for a reason. And if you always remember to your core that this is your passion and you are genuinely doing this because you want to help people, you got this. You will get through it. And just take it one step at a time. You got it.
All right. Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Pilar,
Of
for sharing
course. I'm
this
so happy that you had me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if everyone would please remember to like, comment, and share this video. I think Pilar has given a lot of insightful information that can really help people to be encouraged to make the right decision for their lives and their profession going forward. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Bye.